Hello,
Oh,
everybody.
sweet.
Oh, jeez. Hey, everybody. You're on STICKSOUT podcast. We'll delay on season 2, but we're working through it. I'm here with Brettstar. Hello. Hey, Brett.
Hello.
And Brett, where are you from?
Mount Magnificent, Australia.
Nice. And you're on the east or west side of Australia, or what are you close to?
South.
The south. And
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
Southern coast. Yeah.
Okay. And what's your prop of choice, just for people who don't know?
That would be contact staff.
Okay. And does that count dragon when you say contact staff? Is that like the same thing, or do we say that's different?
I would say it's different. Dragon staff's definitely in there as a prop of choice, as is double contact staff.
Okay.
But, umbrella terms, it all fits in.
So let's get some history about who you are, Brett. So, like, how did you get into this whole spinning a stick around, being like a hippie flow person? No offense, maybe you're not a hippie. But, like, how did you get into all this?
My sister's boyfriend's friend brought some poi back from Darwin in 2003. And I've been more into like BMX jumping and this type of thing. And obviously playing with fire was super cool, made you a hero. So I started playing around with that. I really got into it, I think. I moved to Edinburgh in Scotland in 2005, and Rob Thorburn was holding Uber Poi there. And I started with Poi, and I spun exclusively Poi for about 4 years. And the Uber Poi meetup was something really special, especially because it was sort of before a lot of video was out on the internet, and the level of people that were there was, really incredible. I was fairly well technically advanced in my local scene after practicing for 2 years, but then, met the likes of Burning Dan, Nick Woolsey, Rob Thorburn, Arashi, who else was there? Thomas wasn't there. There was, quite a few anyway. And then on returning to Australia, I was somewhat poor. And when travelling in my van, just spent a lot of time drilling poi in a forest, and it all sort of spun off from there.
So wait, you've been saying the word poi a lot, and like, so when did contact staff enter the picture here? It seems like, it seems as if these days you're best known for your contact staff prowess, not necessarily your poi ability.
Yeah, totally. So the first fire spinning event that was held in Australia was held in Adelaide, and it was actually held on the weekend just after I got back from Scotland. And there I saw Kyle McLean playing with double contact staff, and that was just out of this world.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of the Australian staff spinners that have been spinning for a while were all inspired by and have been influenced by Kyle McLean. So I saw that, was incredibly inspired, but just went, oh my God, that's not something you can learn. That's just Kyle being Kyle. What must have been 2007, late 2007 or 2008, I learnt the staff-on-staff traps. I learnt them from Adam Lobo, who learnt them from Jed, who figured out something that Kyle was doing to get them going. So I actually went, in about 2008, I started double contact staff. And I could do an angel roll, and I could do a crappy Steve, but I didn't really consider myself a contact staff spinner. And then in 2008, I built a dragon, focused on that for a while. Then I went back to double contact staff, 2011 or so, and started playing with double contact folding, and innovating some of that stuff. Then from there, I went to single contact stuff in probably 2015 or so. Yeah, so it was a weird journey, especially considering I started with double contact before single.
Yeah, that's so weird because my journey is vaguely parallel because I saw Kyle McLean at Uber Paris, and that was sort of my beginning contact staff, and I learned from MCP before that, who was totally in love with Kyle McLean. And then my first bit of doubles contact traps I learned was from Matt Bray in Vancouver, Canada. He was the first person that I learned anything from via Mikey Nope, who kind of learned most of it. So it's kind of funny to see the information passageway through multi-continental channels is kind of a trip, actually.
That's
and
interesting.
Adam Lobo lives here now.
I didn't know there wasn't Uber Canada.
It wasn't Uber Canada. It was Uber Paris I went to. I went to Uber Paris, and that's where I met Josh, Sebastian, that whole Roma, and that whole crew. And then a couple years later, I was in Canada, and random dude, Matt Bray, I think it was Canada, or Portland Juggling Festival, somewhere in that world, just was super good at doubles contact. It was crazy, That's where I learned it from, so it's kind of funny.
I know Matt would have. Matt and Jed were both from Perth, so they worked together fair bit, I think, with the doubles contact and also significantly with Dragon.
Yeah, I was thinking about how, just something recently, before we move on to some of these questions, is how, Australia is one of those places that is sort of formative in the contact staff experience. Baton spinning is kind of one of those areas, Fecha, some of these, historical contexts for contact staff, but at least in terms of, as far as I know, I was watching some guy named Benjamin, who was from Adelaide, as one of the first contact staff people I ever saw. And and this is way, way long time ago, and there were really bad downloadable videos. And it's just interesting talking to you now and sort of seeing how it continues to be that way. Is sort of there's a lineage of contact staff or doubles contact that has come from sort of a nexus of Australia. It's just kind of a trip to think about how it's one of the major lineages of staff, even though it's not maybe as prestigious and known as baton spinning or Fecha or things like that, but it's definitely a pretty formative one, huh?
I really put a lot of that down to a lot of Aussies seeing Kyle McLean and going, whoa, what the hell is that? And being inspired.
Yeah, and I saw him do an act where he wore a monkey tail, and he has the rubber gloves on the end of his sticks, and it's the weirdest thing you've ever seen. You're what? But all right.
Yeah, my first staff had rubber gloves filled with rice.
So actually, let's start from the top here. I got so many cool questions for you. So number one is so the chi roll. Let's discuss the chi roll. And for those who don't know, the chi roll kind of does something like this. And what is the origin, as far as you can tell, of the chi roll? Because it's one of those things. For example, I know Fecha probably has something to do with some sort of feeling there, but what is your knowledge of where the chi roll comes from?
So this was back 2011, I think. I'd started playing with Dragon probably mostly 2009, something like this, and I'm not sure back then from other people doing it, so just my perspective, blah blah blah. But I'd found there was this roll, which was the static chi roll, and it seemed really interesting to me because it's a two-handed control roll that you can do in both directions, links to a lot of things, and it seemed like a sort of fundamental base for Dragon stuff. And this circular alternating movement in the body, I was studying yoga at the time, and my instructor was interested in the flow stuff that I was doing. And he was getting into shadow yoga at the time, which is a bit more of a fluid moving style. And he'd said, "Oh wow, this this is a really cool movement that you're doing. It's actually very, very similar to this, which is focused on rolling energy around in the upper body. And from that, I called it the chi roll. I think I've got a video that I don't rate it too highly these days, but back in 2011 it was contact compilation, and I put that up and put up a rant about the chi rolls being this possibility for a base movement for dragon staff. And at that point I had the static ones, not so there's rolling direction, but then there's also rotation direction, forwards and backwards. And Jed Fowler and Matt Bray added in the rotational directions on top of the chi roll. And yeah, so
wait a second.
The name came from me.
Do you feel like you invented the chi roll? I'm just curious. Do you feel like, or at least coined the name, but maybe do you feel as if the chi roll was going on in other contact staff arts or staff arts before?
I'd never seen it. I'd never seen it in fascia. So I feel certain that I independently discovered it.
Nice.
And coined the name. But I remember, I think it was MCP posted a comment on that video going, I knew there would be some use for Kyle's static rolls. So Kyle McLean was probably doing it.
Yeah.
I'm sure some people have sort of, I'm sure it had been done, but yeah, perhaps not seen as such a potential for a basis of movement.
So wait, did you learn about the dragon staff from Gora, or did you see the dragon staff before? Just going back to this dragon staff thing, like where is that from?
So I had an idea for a dragon staff back in 2006, and my idea was basically, let's just put more fire on the stick. I wasn't thinking so much about the rolling thing, but then it was, I was at a party in 2008, and I started doing the one-handed fascia continuous trick, and went, oh my god, this would look so cool with that weird stick idea I had. And I went home and made that. So I hadn't actually seen the dragon from Gora or anyone else, and it was pretty funny actually. I went to 2009 Spinfest, and I was super excited that I had this new prop that I'd never seen before. And I walked into the juggling hall with it, and sitting in the corner on the ground was a dragon staff from Gora that Chris Carlos had got from his trip back then. And at the time, I was calling it the roly-poly staff of Doomy Doomy Doom Doom, because I'd made this heavy, evil thing, and I just got threaded rod and put it through one of my contact staves and angle ground the ends off them, so it was sharp, and I was always bleeding. And back at that time, Gora's staves were a lot more flimsy than they are now, so I had this well over-engineered is a strong word, dragon, and then Gora's was much lighter. And then I spoke to Chris, and he was like, yeah, this is a dragon staff, and I'm like, that's a way smarter name. I'm just going to stop calling it the roly-poly staff of Doomy Doomy Doom Doom. Then I made a dragon for Adam Lobo, because I wanted a playmate in exploring this stuff.
Right.
And then Lobo moved to the East Coast, and he spread the popularity of dragon stuff a lot over there, and then did a US trip, I think 2012 or 13 or something.
Yeah.
So
and Gora also had come as well. I think before that he came to Fire Drums a long time ago, Gora, as well.
Oh, okay.
So there's been a couple of dragon staff. All right, I got a lot of questions here. Here we go. I'm just gonna fly through this. What is the origin of your name, Brettstar Galactica? Is it Battlestar Galactica? Is this where this comes from?
It was Homer Poi, and I think there was a Brett, or maybe I just saw everyone else had a funny name. And I had some friends that called me Brettstar because I had fluffy pants with stars on the bum. So I was like, oh yeah, Brettstar. that works. And then I think when I joined Facebook, I needed a surname, and I was like, Brettstar Galactica. I haven't seen Battlestar Galactica, but it just seemed like a funny pun. So.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so here's some funny ones. This is from Kyle Owen, actually. He's one of my few Patreon subscribers. I have 34 now. But he said, flowers, yes or no? Why? So before you get started, for anybody else, flowers are those things you put on your stick and they flap around. They sort of slow it down, the rolling capacity. What are your thoughts on flowers in general, on a contact staff first, and also their efficacy in teaching people different things? Would you use them all the time? Would you not?
Okay, so I'm still sort of on the fence as to what I think about this. But for me personally, when I'm using a thinner diameter staff, like a 16, 18, I prefer not to have flowers. And that's because once you've got some rolling momentum happening, a smaller staff won't tend to roll as much of a distance for the same rolling momentum. When you've got a larger diameter staff, I find it much more beneficial. If I'm playing a 22 mil staff, I really like to have flowers on it. I like the ability of flowers to have a sort of ramping up and ramping back effect on the rolling momentum. And I like that control of them. But then for some things like, it's basically useless for fishtail manipulation and these type of things. And really only for the longer rolls. So depending on style and diameter of your staff, I think, is where I sit on that one.
Okay. All right. So here's a weird one that just completely changes the thought here. Why is there a twister board on your ceiling in your practice space?
Well, I don't know. There's not anymore, actually. Now it's the Last Supper. So it's the Sistine Chapel here now. And that was just tidying up the house. And we went, we've got this twister board. We don't have the box anymore. Where should that live? Well, we can cover up some of the soot marks on the ceiling if we put the twister board up there, and it's pretty funny. So,
okay.
Yep.
All right.
Roof protection and generalized amusement.
All right. So what we got? Okay, so oh man, there's some hard questions here. So you went to the United States once for flow stuff, and
2016.
So some couple things are like, what were some of your big takeaways from your trip to the States? That's number one. So what are some takeaways? Some of like big things you took away, or like things you were stuck with you about your trip to the States, since it's been 4 years now. Yeah. What kind of things did you take away from your trip?
I'm trying to think about on the technical side of stuff that I learned. But the trip was an incredible trip for sure. Getting to do that road trip and the openness of the community, and it was it's a bigger spinning community than anything I've ever been a part of. And spending some time at the trap in Oakland, that was definitely an amazing experience. Seeing the size of the flow community there and so much happening, to me, kind of felt like what I imagine New Orleans' birth of jazz type of thing, like this massive collection of people all doing creative stuff in an environment where if you're hanging out, you're just going to upskill. And, I live, in the countryside in Australia, so it's a very, very big difference. Another thing that sort of not spinning related was just the beauty of the countryside. When I'd started that trip, I was thinking more about the spinning scene and the people and what that would all be like. And I I intentionally did absolutely no research as to where I was going. Like, I knew that I was going from this state to this state with these people, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just see what's there when I'm looking at it. So as far as I knew, with my poor geography, Montana could have been a cornfield, but turns out that it was absolutely stunning. And yeah, I'm trying to think of in terms of influencing style, and that probably came a lot from just spending some more time with Dave Barron, because he's a phenomenon. And yeah.
Cool. And so like, what was okay, man, this is some interesting ones here. So what was like the biggest, like, okay, let's go this one. How do you come up with your tricks? Like, how do you, like, what like enables you to feel creative? Like, what zone do you get in to feel creative? I mean, are you just like noodling around? Is it like, so like a plan? Like, you know, for example, I have this notebook here with some tricks I've been working on with like triples, and I find ways to, like, you know, work on those. But like, how did you? What is your process for like generating new technique or feeling creative within the technique you have now? Like, what is that process?
My process is really quite informal. Like, I don't have any. I've got basically no notebooks of stuff. It's more video. The thing with folding is probably a good example of this. There's that double contact trick where you chuck a halo roll and neck wrap at the same time, and it does this cool thing where the sticks are off plane and they push each other around your neck, and that, I think that probably just reminded me of cool weird stuff I saw Kyle doing, and I went, I want more stuff that feels like that, and there must be more stuff that feels like that. So I had an idea of what I wanted a trick to feel like, and I sort of alternate between paying attention to what I'm doing and just completely not paying attention and zoning out and just continually trying something again and again and again and again, but to the point where each individual attempt doesn't really seem to be separate from any of the other ones. And then, eventually from there, some coherence gets distilled. Like having an idea for a feeling of something, it's a loose enough approach that you can try a lot of different things chasing a sort of feeling you're thinking about. So you can still experiment within that a lot and find ways that work and ways that don't. And you're not so locked to, I want to make exactly this thing happen. Like some of the stuff that I'm working on now, I've been inspired by watching Wushu, where they do these strikes, which are sort of like this toroidal shape, where the point is of the sword is sort of static and isolated, and it's this curving sort of path. And that just looks really cool. So I've been playing around with that, and I've been going, okay, I want to create that sort of shape and that sort of feeling. And I've been doing a lot of these fishtail things, but I've also been trying to create that with weird steves and angels. And so it's, more of a feeling-based chasing thing rather than a plan. But with that said, I've got drills that I do. I've been, working on matrix variations, and I'll do it this way this many times, the other way that many times, and that's more of a foundation to just get really good control, and then explore from there.
I like that. Going for like, sorry, some hair drying going on in my background. Sorry, I'm gonna move over here. Wow, I'm like creepy now. Okay, well, Very nice. All right, so it doesn't fall. All right. So only a couple more here. So, what was that? What was like? What's your thoughts on like burning out and doing flow arts? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it seems like I don't know about other places, but here in the States, it appears that the lifespan of a flow artist is probably 2 to 3 years potentially. Like in like your average, not like the ones that stick around for a long time, but even the ones that stick around past that, I think it exponentially increases their drop off as they as they progress in years. Why do you think that is, and what are your thoughts on like ways to not burn out or to stay like interested, or like do people really have to at all? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, well, certainly people don't really have to, and I do find that yeah, kind of interesting, and I think I associate probably more with the ones that have been around for a long time. Like I've done the Pirates Retreat thing with Jay Firecat, Dave Barron's obviously been around in the scene for years. MCP, Seb Berger, Simon Tortzen, hanging out with Fabio as well, yourself. There's a few that have just stuck at this thing for like 15 years or so. And I find I'm generally closer to the ones that are like that. Probably a lot of shared history there. And yourself as well. I'm not sure when you started spinning. What year was that?
Like 2003 or so, somewhere in that world. Probably even
2002.
Yeah. Was Poi, yep. But 2000, 2002 is when I started Poi. Yes. That's when I learned from Matt Terry, an Australian from Sphericalism. That was my first Poi teacher. Like, it's funny, like, a lot of people are like, oh, I learned from, like, Drex, or I learned from Nick Woosley. Matt Terry was my Poi teacher, and nobody has any, even though the dude was, like, killing it, kind of. He was kind of killing it. Like, nobody has any idea who he is. But if you ever are a Poi person and want to do some history research, you should, not you, but other people should look at Matt Terry in sphericalism.net, and a hilarious video in retrospect, Sphericular Visions. If you can find it, man, what a funny video.
I'm in that.
Are you?
I walked past and get in the way of the shot, which was taken at Uberpoi.
Nice.
And I learned a lot from Matt Terry as well. Yeah, so in terms of the burnout, I think it's possibly to do with some form of probably related to people's motivation for getting into doing it and that type of thing. I'm not sure if I can eloquently articulate what I see in that, but it's probably a thing that's common to a lot of things. People get excited about something, they think it's going to be this, that, and the other. They put a bunch into it, and then the sort of skill reward curve probably drops off a bit. And yeah.
So you said something that kind of got to me a little bit. I think one part of it is that feeling like you don't have any peers anymore, right? Like, just kind of a weird thing to consider, but like not just in age, which is also kind of obvious, right? You stick around a scene long enough, you're older. There's not a lot of older people. That kids are like between 18 and 30, and you're like, dang, you're like hitting 38 or something, right? Like, you kind of feel like there's not a lot of peers in your age, but also peers in terms of ability and experience, right? Like, I don't want to like poo-poo on people that are getting started. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, someone shows you something, they come at you with all this enthusiasm and like finding space to be enthusiastic about that. But I think sometimes burnout comes from like feeling like, yeah, there's not a lot of people that relate to you in the scene anymore, and not just necessarily inability, or age. It's like some other kind of thing, like spirit. And I think because a lot of people tend to do this when they're young, they're like, okay, I'm done with fire spinning, I don't care as much. And then so it's like, as that happens, like even for me myself, like the group that I started spinning with, like the original group, only like one of 7 of those people still spin at all, right? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and so yeah. So anyways, maybe that's a part of it. I don't know. I was thinking about that.
Yeah, and it often does tend to be sort of something people get into during uni years and then jump back out of, or something like that. And with the scene being really big now as well, there's probably some stuff to do with you put so many years of practice into something, even if it's 3 or 4. And there's that many people with incredible skill levels now that perhaps the recognition and that validation thing isn't quite as strong for some people and that type of thing. And then that input versus reward to what you get, like how quickly you skill up, certainly drops off. Like I'm practicing angel rolls at the moment. I've been practicing angel rolls for like a decade.
Right.
There's not too many people that are going to be like, oh yeah, no, I really do need to clean that up just that little bit more.
Right. Yeah. All right. 2 last questions for you, Brett, and we'll call it a day. These are from Mikey Nope. Number 1 is, what is your favorite festival snack?
What is my favorite festival snack? Morning coffee.
Coffee. Nice.
Morning coffee, for sure.
All right. And the other one, which is, we'll end on this one. What is consciousness?
I'm wondering the motivation to ask me specifically.
I don't know. Hold on 1 second. I might have another question for you. I'm just going to look and see. Hold on. Okay, good. Nobody. All right. No one has one. Yeah, well, you don't have to answer that if you don't have anything, you know. I mean, I don't know. You're a doctor. Maybe you would know more about this.
Yeah, of neuroscience even. And yeah, no, I've really got very little on that. I mean, there's integrated information theory of consciousness, but that's it doesn't really get you too far. So. Yep.
But you're a neuroscience doctor. You can't answer, like, you don't have a thought of what consciousness is. Like, do you believe there's more than just, like, you know, the machine bits going together? Is it like, are we just like machine bits going together, it's done? What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, at a low level for sensory stuff, for sure, it's I think really mechanical. There's some really interesting things. I think there's a theory about predictive coding, where we basically have a little model of the world inside of our brain, and we're trying to basically predict our own inputs and work off the errors in our own predictions. So that ability for a system to create a model of the world with a sort of feedback loop tied to the outside world, sort of it constitutes some form of agent that, you know, has what's the word I'm looking for? It's not free will, and I don't want to say free will. I'm going blank on the word that I'm looking for. But something that isn't an agent in an environment that has some level of a model of the external world within it. Doesn't even actually need to be a particularly good model, because all models are wrong, but some are useful.
Right. Wow, that's a compliment. Well, Brett, well, stay online for a minute. I just want to thank you for being my interview today. And thanks for responding and all the other times I was planning on it. Got to all those questions. And yeah, thanks for visiting. Stay online. I'm just going to turn this thing off here. All right. Bye. Say bye,
cool.
Brett.
Thanks. See ya.
All right. Stop.